Lieutenant Commander Kim Tae-ho was 3 hours into his night shift when the communication console started screaming. The piercing alarm cut through the quiet hum of the patrol ship Soul's Pride like a knife. Tae-ho bolted upright from his captain's chair, coffee spilling across his uniform as red warning lights bathed the bridge in an eerie glow. "What the hell is that?" shouted Corporal Park Ji-woo from the navigation station, his fingers dancing across holographic displays that flickered with incoming data streams. Tae-ho wiped coffee from his chest and rushed to the main console. The key distress signal was unlike anything he'd seen in 12 years of deep space patrol. Instead of the usual automated emergency beacon, this was raw, desperate audio transmission cutting through subspace static. "By the ancient star, please, anyone. Our people are dying." The voice was alien, speaking in the universal trade language, but with a melodic quality that made Tae-ho's skin crawl. Behind the words, he could hear something else, screaming, mechanical alarms, and what sounded like hull breaches venting atmosphere into space. "Ji-woo, get me a location on this signal," Tae-ho ordered, his training kicking in despite the ice forming in his stomach. The young corporal's face went pale as the star charts materialized in three-dimensional light above their heads. "Sir, it's coming from the Valthari merchant vessel Celestial Dawn. They're drifting in dead space about 40,000 kilometers off our starboard bow." Tae-ho knew that ship. The Celestial Dawn was a massive cargo hauler, nearly 2 kilometers long and home to over 3,000 Valthari crew members. The Valthari were peaceful traders, tall, graceful beings with silver skin and large expressive eyes that reminded humans of dolphins. They'd been humanity's first real friends among the stars. "Bring us around full power to engines," Tae-ho commanded, but Ji-woo hesitated at his station. "Sir, there's something else you need to see." Ji-woo's voice cracked as he pulled up another display. "I'm reading 3 other ship signatures in the area, all dead, no life signs, no power, nothing." The tactical display showed the graveyard. Clearly, 3 vessels from different species, a Zentorian science ship, a Gorvani mining platform, and what looked like a Thessian diplomatic cruiser, all floating dark and silent in the void. "What happened to them?" Tae-ho whispered. But deep down he already knew. The stories had been spreading through the outer colonies for months. Ships found empty, crews dead from some unknown plague that struck without warning and killed without mercy. The communication console crackled to life again. This time the Valthari voice was weaker, more desperate. "This is Captain Veltara of the merchant vessel Celestial Dawn. Our medical bay reports 80% crew mortality. The sickness, it spreads through our ventilation systems. Our healers are powerless against it. We have younglings aboard. Please." The transmission cut to static. Tae-ho stared at the display showing the massive Valthari ship. Its running lights flickered weakly, and he could see sections where the hull plating had been jettisoned, probably desperate attempts to stop the spread of whatever was killing them. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from Galactic Command," announced Communications Officer Lee Subin, her voice tight with worry. The holographic image of Admiral Chen Wei-ming materialized above the bridge, his stern face marked by years of commanding humanity's deep space fleet. "Lieutenant Commander Kim, you are to maintain your current position and await further orders. Under no circumstances are you to approach the quarantined vessel." "Quarantined, sir?" Tae-ho felt his heart sink. "The Galactic Medical Council has declared the entire sector a dead zone. Whatever killed those other ships is aboard the Celestial Dawn. 3 star systems have already gone dark from this plague. We cannot risk it spreading further." Tae-ho looked at his crew. Ji-woo and Subin stared back at him with the same expression he felt on his own face, horror mixed with helpless rage. Somewhere on that dying ship were 3,000 beings, including children, and they were being condemned to death by bureaucratic fear. "Sir, surely there must be something," Tae-ho began. "The order is final, Commander. The Celestial Dawn will be left to drift. When the last life sign goes dark, automated drones will destroy the vessel to prevent contamination. Admiral Chen out." The hologram disappeared, leaving the bridge in terrible silence. Through the view screen, Tae-ho could see the Celestial. In the distance, its lights growing dimmer by the hour. Somewhere in that massive hull, Captain Veltara and her crew were fighting a losing battle against an enemy they couldn't see or understand. The distress signal came again, weaker now, barely audible through the static. "Anyone, please, the younglings that they don't deserve." Taeho closed his eyes and made a decision that would change everything. Captain Cho Hyejin stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the evacuation shuttles disappear into hyperspace. One by one, the lights of the fleeing ships vanished, leaving her frigate alone in the dark space above New Haven Colony. The communications console buzzed with angry messages from Fleet Command, ordering her to follow the retreat, but she'd already switched it off. "Captain, that's the last of them," reported Lieutenant Kim Min-ho from the tactical station. His voice was steady, but she could see his hands shaking as he monitored the sensor displays. "The colony transport ships are away. 50,000. Civilians safe." Cho nodded, feeling the weight of what they were about to do. Her ship was old, a Mark 7 frigate built 30 years ago with weapons that most galactic militaries had scrapped decades ago. The Defiant had been scheduled for the scrapyard before this crisis started. Now it was all that stood between New Haven and total destruction. "What's our weapons status, Min-ho?" 2 plasma cannons, both running at 60% efficiency. "We've got 12 torpedo tubes, but only 36 missiles left in storage. The point defense systems are working, but they're slow compared to modern standards." Min-ho paused, then added quietly, "Captain, the Zarathi fleet has 200 ships. Each one is 3 times our size." From the engineering station, Chief Park Sung-min looked up from his displays. "Captain, I've been thinking. These old plasma cannons might be outdated, but they run on pure fusion power. The Zarathi use energy shields designed to stop modern particle beams. They might not be calibrated for our ancient tech." Cho raised an eyebrow. "You're saying our old junk might actually work better?" "Maybe. Their shields are smart, they adapt to incoming fire automatically. But they're programmed to expect modern weapons. Our plasma cannons are so primitive, their systems might not recognize them as threats until it's too late." Navigation. Officer Lee Yu-jin suddenly straightened at her station. "Captain, I'm picking up the Zarathi fleet on long-range sensors. They'll be here in 2 hours. My God, there are so many of them." The main screen flickered to life, showing a tactical display of the approaching enemy fleet. It looked like a swarm of angry wasps, hundreds of red dots moving in perfect formation toward New Haven. Each dot represented a warship capable of destroying entire cities. "Where's the nearest asteroid field?" Cho asked, studying the display. "About 40,000 kilometers from the colony," Yu-jin replied. "It's the remains of New Haven's third moon. Mining operations broke it apart 20 years ago." Cho smiled grimly. "Perfect. That's where we make our stand." The Defiant moved through space toward the asteroid belt, its old engines groaning with the effort. The ship had been built for patrol duties, not for battle against overwhelming odds. But as they entered the field of floating rocks and metal debris, Cho began to see possibilities. "Min-ho, start tagging the larger asteroids with navigation. Beacons. I want to know exactly where every rock bigger than our ship is located." "Yes, ma'am. Captain, what's the plan?" Cho pointed at the tactical display. "The Zarathi fight like most advanced civilizations. They rely on formation flying, computer-controlled attacks, and overwhelming firepower. They'll come straight through this asteroid field in their perfect battle groups, expecting us to either run or die quickly." Chief Park wiped grease from his hands and grinned. "But we're not going to do either, are we?" "Exactly. We're going to fight dirty. How long would it take to rig our remaining torpedoes with proximity detonators?" "About an hour if we work fast." "But, Captain, without guidance systems, they'll just be floating mines." "That's the idea. We'll scatter them throughout the asteroid field. When the Zarathi come through, they'll be flying blind, trying to avoid rocks while our mines explode around them." Yu-jin looked worried. "Captain, this is suicide. Even if we damage some of their ships, there are still 200 of them. When they figure out what we're doing, they'll adapt," Cho finished. "I know. But every minute we keep them busy is another minute for the colonists to get further away. Every ship we damage is one less gun pointed at innocent people." The crew worked frantically for the next hour. Chief Park and his engineering team converted torpedoes into improvised mines, while Minho programmed the ship's computers to track hundreds of asteroids simultaneously. Eugene plotted hiding spots among the larger rocks where the Defiant could strike and disappear. Captain Minho announced, "Proximity alarms. The Zarathi fleet just dropped out of hyperspace." The main screen showed the enemy fleet arranged in perfect attack formation. The Zarathi ships were sleek and deadly, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor plating. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could tear the Defiant apart in seconds. Cho took a deep breath and settled into her captain's chair. "All right, people. Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to make them remember us. For every human who ever refused to back down, for every time someone said the odds were impossible, for 50,000 people who are counting on us to buy them time." The Defiant powered down to minimal systems and drifted behind a massive asteroid, waiting like a predator in the dark. The Zarathi fleet moved into the asteroid field like a school of metallic sharks, their formation tight and disciplined. Captain Cho watched from behind a massive chunk of twisted metal that had once been part of New Haven's mining station. The Defiant hung silent in the shadow, all systems running on minimum power to avoid detection. "First wave coming through Sector 7, whispered Lieutenant Kim Minho, his voice barely audible even on the bridge. 12 ships, moving in diamond formation just like we expected." Cho smiled coldly. The Zarathi were predictable. They always followed their tactical manuals to the letter. It was a weakness humans had learned to exploit during the border wars. Wait for it. Let them get nice and comfortable. The lead Zarathi destroyer glided between two large asteroids, its sensors sweeping the area. The ship was beautiful in a deadly way. Smooth black hull covered in glowing weapon ports, twice the size of the Defiant, and armed with enough firepower to level a city. Its escort ships followed in perfect formation, their movements synchronized, like a deadly dance. "Now," Cho ordered. Chief Park Sung-min hit the detonation switch. 3 improvised mines that had been hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids exploded simultaneously. The vacuum of space couldn't carry sound, but the Defiant's sensors picked up the electromagnetic pulse from the explosions. The lead destroyer's shields flared bright blue as debris and plasma energy hammered against them. "Direct hit on their lead ship," Minho reported excitedly. "Shields down to 40%. But Cho was already moving. "Eugene, get us out of here." Full power to engines. The Defiant burst from its hiding spot like an angry hornet, engines blazing as it dove deeper into the asteroid field. Behind them, the Zarathi formation was breaking apart, trying to figure out where the attack had come from. Their sophisticated sensors were useless among all the metal debris and radiation from the destroyed mining equipment. "They're scanning everything," reported Communications Officer Lee Subin. "Their targeting computers are going crazy trying to lock onto us." "Good. Confusion is our friend." Cho studied the tactical display, looking for the next ambush point. "Minho, what's our torpedo count?" "Down to 28. But Captain, look at this." Minho highlighted a section of his display. "The Zarathi are regrouping, but they're doing exactly what we hoped. They're trying to clear safe corridors through the field by destroying asteroids." Cho watched as the enemy ships began systematically blasting apart the larger rocks with their main guns. It was the logical response. Eliminate, cover and force the human ship into open space. But it was also exactly what she'd been counting on. "They're doing our job for us," she said with satisfaction. "Every asteroid they destroy creates more debris, more places to hide our mines. And look at their formation. They're spreading out to avoid collisions." The Zarathi fleet was no longer moving in tight, disciplined groups. Instead, individual ships were picking their way carefully through the field, isolated from their escorts. It was exactly the opportunity Cho had been waiting for. That cruiser on the left flank. It's gotten separated from the others. Cho pointed at a lone Zarathi ship that had moved too far ahead of its support group. "Time to teach them why humans are the galaxy's best hunters." The Defiant dropped behind a spinning chunk of metal and waited. The Zarathi cruiser approached, slowly, its sensors probing every shadow. When it passed within 500 meters, Cho struck. "All weapons fire." Both plasma cannons opened up simultaneously, their ancient fusion bolts slamming into the Zarathi ship's side armor. The enemy shields, designed to stop modern particle beams, flickered and failed against the primitive but powerful plasma fire. Holes appeared in the alien hull, venting atmosphere and debris into space. "They're damaged but not finished," Minho reported. "Return fire incoming." Energy beams lanced out from the wounded Zarathi ship, but the Defiant was already moving. Eugene threw the frigate into a spinning dive that would have been impossible for a larger, more advanced ship. They slipped between two asteroids as the enemy fire scorched empty space behind them. "Beautiful flying, Eugene," Cho shouted over the alarm sirens. "Now let's disappear before his friends show up." The Defiant vanished into the maze of debris, leaving the damaged Zarathi cruiser calling frantically for assistance. Within minutes, 6 enemy ships converged on the area, their weapons blazing as they fired at shadows and ghosts. "They're getting angry," Subin observed, listening to the intercepted Zarathi communications. "Their commander is ordering all ships to maintain formation and stop chasing individual contacts." "Too late for that," Cho replied. "Look at them. Half their fleet is scattered through the field, and they're jumping at every piece of floating metal. Fear is a weapon, too." For the next hour, the Defiant played a deadly game of cat and mouse among the asteroids. They would appear long enough to fire a few shots or detonate a mine, then vanish before the Zarathi could respond effectively. Each attack was small, barely scratching the enemy's superior numbers, but the cumulative effect was devastating to their morale. "Captain, we've damaged 7 of their ships and destroyed 2 fighters," Minho reported, "but we're down to 18 torpedoes, and the Zarathi are starting to adapt. They're using their own fighters as scouts." Cho nodded grimly. The enemy was learning, just as she'd known they would. Soon they'd figure out how to counter human tactics. But every minute of confusion and delay was precious time for the New Haven colonists to escape. "Then we'll have to get creative." The Defiant limped through the asteroid field, her hull scarred and bleeding atmosphere from dozens of holes. Captain Cho Hyejin gripped her command chair as another explosion rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading from damaged control panels. They'd been fighting for 6 hours, and the old frigate was finally dying. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Chief Park Sung-min, his voice strained over the emergency lighting. "I've sealed it with emergency foam, but we can't take many more hits like that." Lieutenant Kim Minho looked up from his tactical station, blood trickling from a cut above his eye. "Captain, we're down to our last 4 torpedoes. The port plasma cannon is completely dead, and the starboard one is running at 15% power." Through the main view screen, Cho could see the Zarathi fleet closing in. What had started as 200 ships was now down to about 160. But that was still overwhelming odds. The aliens had finally adapted to human tactics, using their smaller fighters to flush the Defiant out of hiding spots. While their capital ships waited in ambush. "They're learning too fast," muttered Navigation Officer Lee Eugene, frantically plotting escape routes that no longer existed. "Captain, they've got us boxed in. 3 destroyers blocking our path to open space, fighters swarming the asteroid field, and a battle cruiser moving to cut off our last exit." Cho studied the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Despite everything, they'd bought precious time. The colony ships carrying New Haven's 50,000 refugees were now 3 star systems away, safely beyond Zarathi reach. Every minute of this hopeless fight had been worth it. Communications Officer Lee Subin broke the tense silence. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the Zarathi flagship. They're demanding our surrender." "Put it through," Cho ordered, straightening in her chair despite the pain from her broken ribs. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of a massive Zarathi warship. The alien commander was a towering figure with chitinous armor plating, and 4 arms, each ending in razor-sharp claws. His insect-like eyes glowed with cold intelligence as he spoke in perfectly translated human language. "Human vessel, I am War Commander Zekthal of the Zarathi Imperial Fleet. Your resistance has been impressive. Surrender now, and your crew will be granted quick deaths instead of slow torture." Cho laughed, wiping blood from her mouth. "That's generous of you, Bugface, but I've got a counteroffer. How about you take your fleet and crawl back to whatever hive spawned you?" The Zarathi commander's mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement. "Brave words from a dying ship. You have cost us 12 vessels and nearly 300 warriors. For this, your species will pay dearly. We will hunt down every human colony, every ship, every... Yeah, standard villain speech, Cho interrupted. Here's the thing about humans, Zekthal. We don't know when to quit. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Minho was clutching his wounded arm but still manning his station. Yujin had a nasty burn across her cheek but kept working the navigation controls. Chief Park was covered in grease and radiation. Burns from keeping the engines running far past their limits. Subin's communications equipment was sparking and failing, but she maintained contact with the fleeing colony ships. Listen up, people, Cho said quietly. We've done what we came here to do. Those 50,000 civilians are safe because of us, because we bought them time. Another massive impact shook the ship. Through the hull they could hear the scream of escaping air and the groan of failing structural supports. Captain, Chief Park called out, his voice tight with controlled panic. The reactor containment is failing. I can keep it stable for maybe 10 more minutes, but after that... He didn't need to finish the sentence. Cho looked around at her crew. 30 brave souls who had volunteered to stay behind when they could have evacuated with the others. Each one of them knew this was a one-way mission, but none had hesitated. Subin, open a channel to all human frequencies. Full broadcast, maximum power. Channel open, Captain. Cho stood up slowly, feeling the weight of what she was about to. Taesi, this is Captain Cho Hai-jin of the Earth frigate Defiant, to all human vessels. We are making our final stand at New Haven. The Zerathi fleet has been stopped here, but reinforcements are needed. The colony ships are safe, but this system must be held. She paused, looking at each member of her crew one last time. To any humans listening, remember us. Remember that when the odds were impossible, we didn't run. We stood and fought because that's what humans do. We protect the innocent no matter the cost. The Zerathi ships were closing in from all sides now, their weapons charging for the final assault. Cho could see fighter craft swarming around the Defiant like angry wasps, waiting for the order to finish them off. Chief Park, how long until reactor overload? I can trigger it manually from here, Captain, but once I start the sequence, we'll have about 30 seconds before... Do it, Cho ordered. All hands brace for impact. It's been an honor serving with you. Through the view screen, she could see the massive Zerathi battle cruiser moving in for the kill, flanked by 11 other ships in tight formation. They thought they were closing in for an easy victory against a crippled human vessel. They were about to learn how wrong they were.